Welcome back to Made Up of Wires. We are decompiling Castlevania Symphony of the Night. If you want to know more about the Castlevania Symphony of the Night decompilation project, you can go to soten.c.dev, which obviously wants to refresh as soon as I switch to it. You'll find status of several of the overlays that we've been working on here live, as well as what others have done outside of this as well. We've been working on NO1 along with the long library in the past couple days. I might do something a little bit different to start and then go from there. So I mentioned last week that I now have a copy of the JP 1.0 release of Symphony of the Night, and I thought it might be interesting to look at something like the Warp Room that we have decompiled in several other versions of the game and see how that compares. One of the things that I noticed when playing through it last night was enemies respawn without leaving the room. I was going through the first hallway in the entrance, and that was one of the first things that stood out. Was you go past a warg, defeat it, and then walk back, and it was there again. And I confirmed that is not the behavior in the US release. I don't know when that changed. I'm sure. So there's 3 Japanese releases that I know of the game. Likely one of them took things from bug fixes and other things from the US release. Good evening, Dig Down Deep. Good to have you back. The other things I noticed were that the stage titles coming into a new stage I thought looked much better than the US stage titles. And there are a few other just small things, mostly effects that changed between the 2 versions. So I thought it might be fun to see what it looks like to add a new version of the game. It's not trivial, and I'm probably going to get a lot of things wrong in the process, but we can try to work through that together. So the first place I'm going to start is the make file. And we have a couple of these defined already. I thought we had a list somewhere, but maybe not in here. And since we don't have a strict list at the moment, let's go to the GitHub wiki and look how they're listed there. The naming of all of these is going to be based on whatever we call this first version. And so we want to make sure that we get it right, since there are multiple JP releases. And it looks like JP 1.0 is the name that was originally given. So that's what we'll call it. And it's going to require copying a lot of targets and other things like that along the way. So let's look for, I guess PEU is probably the most unique string to look for. I think I'm going to start here with build, and we'll add a build JP10. And just start with warp. Adding a symbol sort for JP10. I don't know if this will ever make it back in, or at least not soon. And I'm going to see if there's any other assumptions about US. There is. This is for force symbols. This really should use the version. And that's probably something that can be fixed while we're here. I say it should use the version. This will only work for US at the moment because most of these stages only exist in the US build. So that might have to change slightly. So I'll undo that for now. The other place I'm going to look is in the PlayStation make file. And so first we need an extract target. And we'll copy that. One thing that this could do while I'm looking at this as well, you can set things like version, for example, and there's nothing that differs here except for the version. So extract could just use the version. And maybe there's an extract PSX target then, so that these can be reused. So we're going to have JP10 targets. And so that we need to add JP10 targets up here. I'll have to rename. I ripped this disk as just JP. I'll have to rename my rip. So I'm going to look for anything else that has HD or JP in it. Or sorry, HD or US. I'm not sure why this can't be generic. So that's the only other use of JP. Oh, I missed that one. So I think this might be enough. So that's enough to get the disk extracted. I am going to move my disk, my soten.jp bin to soten.jp10 bin, and soten.jp.q to soten.jp10.q. And we have to edit the Q file to make sure it points now at the right bin. So we should be able to extract the disk now, and let's try doing that. So our version is JP10, and we're going to try to extract disk, see how it goes. And so if we look at disks, JP10, we have files, that's a good sign. The next thing is the make config tools. These make it easy to grab one of the overlays and bootstrap a splat config. And what I want to see here is what else we need. So our version is not going to be PSP. So hopefully this just works, but we'll see when we get there. So let's try to so set an environment variable to JP10, the version tape. Dumping memory when needed? No. I don't think so. And I can't remember if I need to do ST warp or just warp. We'll try warp. And yeah, that worked. Great. So this is coming through. So yeah, there was ways to... I'm not as familiar with the PlayStation debugging tools, but like the NetEurosi had a port, for example, a parallel port where you can connect it to your computer. And you could do debugging live. Dumping memory, though, I don't know. So my in my own personal history, like I was not programming in 1995 or 97, at least not this serious. So my tool experience comes mostly from like 99 and forward. And I mean, we had Visual Studio, we had debuggers, we had GCC, we had all these other things. I can't remember. I mean, there were definitely times where you'd look at memory to see like what you might have screwed up in your C++ program, but yeah, my guess is that the debuggers were hooking into the hardware and allowing them to break, just like debuggers do now. Oh, and the how overlays work. Yeah, again, like on consoles and embedded system, yes. Not on, like if you're writing a Windows 3.1 program, you would not be loading things directly to offsets in memory. You could in Windows 3.1 because there was no protected memory. I'm trying to think. So Mac OS until OS 10 didn't have protected memory either, but they had some other tricks because of how memory addressing worked there. By the time Windows 95, though, came around, and especially NT, where you did have virtual memory, I mean, you were linking against libraries like we do today. No different. So embedded or like consoleized systems where RAM was relatively precious, and you were the only program running, so you could do whatever you wanted with the memory. It was more common. And then for performance reasons as well, you might not want dynamic loading where it's not, you don't get to control necessarily what the memory layout is, which might invalidate caches and all kinds of other things like that. So this looks like it worked. I'm actually surprised that I was able to get this on the first go. So I'm going to extract JP10. We should have a splat config for warp. Okay, so we're missing an assets file. I have never looked at the assets files, so I don't know what format this is or what it's going to look like. So this looks like it's related to the F underscore files, I think. No, this is coming from those bins. So we have to make a new one of these. So I'm going to make that and just say I don't know anything about it yet, and we'll see how it goes from there. Try it again. We need a SHA, okay. And we'll take the SHA sum of work and warp, so warp.bin and append it to there, and then we have to go in and change this. I've been meaning to to rewrite these because we duplicate this data. If we had a linter to make sure that the SHA was in our splat config, it's already there, and so we're duplicating this in this second file. It's not a huge amount of data, but anything that's duplicated and we can get rid of would be nice. Okay, try it again. Oops. I'm going to export JP10 so I don't have to keep specifying it. Alright, so we should have an assembly directory now for JP10, and we do. And we should see the warp stuff in there and have a bunch of non-matchings. And there's a lot of them. And so make config actually went through and found a bunch of these symbols already, which is pretty awesome because this is a version of the game that it has never seen before. So what would be nice to do, we could run dupes here. It takes a while though. It's going to take a couple minutes to run. Excuse me. What I think I'll do though is grab one of these functions. First look at the splat config. And compare that to the US. I'm assuming that this is going to be the closest thing we have. That'll be closer than the PSP version. And what I want to see is where are the boundaries for the different sections. So RO data starts at 6E30 for the US version versus 6E74. So there is something slightly different in data. We have a little bit more data. And then our C section starts at 6FDO. Is that the same difference? No, we have a little more RO data on the US side this time. And then BSS 131, a bit more code as well on the US side. So more code, less data. So let's look at, so all of our offsets are going to be different, which is a bummer. What we want to do is find what comes after breakable, because that is going to be the warp functions. So I'm going to look at the functions that would be in breakable. And it looks like that's just entity breakable. And then I want to find that in the JP10. And that symbol didn't get matched. Okay. So what else comes early? Debug. So let's look at what's in debug. Entity background block. Let's see if that one got matched. That one didn't get matched either. Okay, so let's find what our earliest functions are. So we'll look at. We should have a new warp directory called warp jp10. No. Do we get a jp10.c? We do. We do a jp10.c. So we have things like small rocks. So here's entity ID 12. So this first part is stdebug, like we expect. And then this next function should be breakable if we're following the same layout. So then let's open warp. And we should see some of these small rocks, etc. So the first one, entity warp room, is most likely that function. And then we have small rocks. So those do align pretty well. Excuse me. And that would take us through to... Oh, it's just those two functions. And so everything else is common code that may or may not be the same. So what should we look at? Let's look at entity breakable and see if that's the same. If it is, then we should have a function here that that matches. I am going to see if I can make and have this work. There. It looks like my version didn't get exported to Vim for some reason. Okay, so this may be related to the makefile. The version that is being loaded. So we do have the correct version, but the build is attempting to or include ASM is attempting to use the US version. So let's look at the include ASM macro and see where it's getting its version from. Here. So it's assuming that version is being set. And let's look at common. So it will do some things. So we have to set this as well. And so I think that I can just add another entry here. And I don't think that we have many cases where we're specifically looking for version US versus PSP, etc. But I am going to look just in case there is something else I'm missing. So there is some defines there. So we probably need to add a define for PlayStation versus PSP and use that as well. I'm not going to focus on that yet because these are macros that may not matter yet. Let's try to make and see if that worked. So we need this undefined sims. Dirt is a utility that's used to tweak some bits. So there's some cases where through compiling and linking, the final binary still doesn't match, and there's some garbage that may have been either uninitialized variables or other things like that that were random when the game was made. And so those need to just kind of be forced to match. Why didn't I touch that? I'm not familiar with the dirt config file, so I will look at that. So it looks like this shouldn't affect us anyway. I will at least give it the right structure though. Which is just an empty array. And it built, and it's okay. So we have a building, a built warp room binary, and now we can go through and see how close this version is to the US version. So, like I said, I think I'm going to start just with debug, and we can start splitting this as well, but I'm not going to do that yet. So I'm going to load that JP10. And we'll look at this first stdebug function. And now go over to decomp.me, and we'll just try to use the same code that's already been decompiled. The symbols are going to be a little different, and those either need to be remapped or the data imported. What order that's done, that is up to the person doing it. I find it a little bit difficult to both decompile and import data at the same time. And some of the shared files that we have now are just written that way. So I'm copying this over. And this does match. So we can look at unknown entity 12 as well and see if those match. We get another symbol along the way. So we know that this B730 is animate entity. And this C310 is initialize entity. So those are good to have. So let's do that. Let's grab entity unknown ID 12. And the reason that this is a separate file from debug is likely because it exists by itself in some overlays and not others. I should mention, so Entropy Gravity Well was asking, is this with overlays and like dumping things directly to memory? Is this how things are done anymore? It did make me think of how even modern game development, though, is done. And between the PS4 and the PS5, one of the things that they talked about was when studios are building games, they're still doing this. So when we write other programs, no, we don't do it. But yeah, game studios actually do. They will build assets. So we have all these different entities that are duplicated across overlays. And they did the same thing with disk-based games because it was faster to stream the new stuff off the disk than go to different places on a spinning platter and load it that way. And so I remember that being part of the announcement for the PS5 is we have this super fast SSD now. Random reads are just as fast as streaming reads. So you don't have to duplicate your stuff anymore. So I'm going to grab this function as well. This one looks a little longer. Not too bad, though. And maybe it'll be the same and maybe it won't. We'll see. Did this one get a symbol? Did. It makes me think that that this is going to be the same as well. And it has the same entity argument signature as most other things. This one will be a little harder to grab some of the signatures. Not too bad. It's only a few of them. Grab those. And again, whether or not the data is the same is not something we necessarily can tell yet. I'm going to keep making these static. So far, just immediate differences, which is fine. No issue there. We have a few more addresses that we can map to symbols, which is nice. And that was it. Only symbol differences there too. So far, this JP 1.0 version looks like it is basically the same as what we see in the US version. And I mean, that's playing through the JP version, there's not significant differences. Like I mentioned at the start, there are enemies that respawn differently than in the US retail release. And so when we get to that point in the entrance, it'll be interesting to see how that effects. Like where is that logic? Is it in DRA? Is it part of the stage itself? Is it an attribute on enemies that they respawn once they go off script? Once their starting location is off screen. All right, so that was just some fun that I wanted to have with the JP10 version. And we can go back to looking at the outer wall. And before I do that, I'm going to go grab a drink, and I will be right back. Stand by. All right, we're back in. This time we are going to look back at the outer wall, and let's see what I have in here. There are some things that I will have to exclude. So yeah, we were working in this file. I'm just going to try to find some more. I was just going through and basically one after another knocking these functions out, and I think that is probably a good way to continue. Not necessarily knowing what these are. If you were on yesterday, you saw that we found the fish when you look through the telescope. That was fun. And we'll keep going. I am going to see if anybody has started this. It looks new. And I am going to see if anybody is a caller of this so we can get a signature early. And it looks like it is just an entity. So we can start with that signature. So reasonable looking switch. There is one signature that we have to figure out what it is, but this is a common function, so that's actually pretty easy to do. Not using a modern editor, I just grabbed for these. Likely if you were using VS Code or something else like that, you could use your global search to find that. I'm going to run the decompile one more time now that we have that signature. So this G entities 224, that's an offset into the G entities, the global entities table. This 1780 is an interesting value. It's some multiple of entities past this location. Why that was chosen, I'm not sure. And maybe, because 224 is being loaded down here as well. So we have the offset at 224 to figure out, and then whatever this other one is, we have to find the size of entity, which I think is hex BC, and divide that here. M2C doing a bang up job. Good job, M2C. So let's fix those. And I'm not sure if this is hex 224 or something else, but we'll figure that out in a little bit. The offsets don't seem to be changing, so it does look like decimal 224, which is good. So let's figure out what this is. So that looks like 20. So instead of this temp S3, we should be able to do G entities 244. Whether or not that is going to work, I don't know, but we'll see. That actually worked perfectly. My offsets were wrong though. We're only getting EBO different. So was I off by 10? Or factor of 2? Not quite there yet, a little higher. So let's split the difference and see. Yeah, still not right. Let's let me do that again. And wrong screen. I'm trying to figure out what this offset is. It was calculated as 1780, and when I do 1780 divided by hex BC, I got 20. But it looks like it is not that. So let's find the entity struct. It is size BC. All right, so 1608, 1780 minus 1608. Let's see how much more I need to. Let's see, first I'm at 178 hex. It's 2 more. Everything divides by into 2s. That looks right. 256, nice number. So we have those, and then there's just one more thing up here on line 36, and then we have to, it's not going to be enough to just get that matching. We're going to have to also organize this a little nicer. So this step increment looks like it's either happening out of order or something else is going on. I am going to change this to greater than C2. Sometimes that affects registers and other things down below. Okay, let me get rid of some variables if possible, and then see if we still have that one missing register out of order instruction. I think only one additional variable is necessary here, and it's using the same register. So that should be fine. So temp v0 underscore 2, I'm going to replace that with entity, and then I can replace v0 with entity as well. And we still have that one mismatch on line 31. I'll try reordering that. I don't think that's going to help, though. It doesn't. Oh. I need chat. So that didn't work either. I'm going to change this to a plus plus. Sometimes that helps when that is being read down below. This global timer divided by 10 times 10. It basically they're trying to see if this is a multiple of 10. And so it's possible that this could be written mod 10 equals 0. And that works out to be the same thing. So now really I'm just trying to figure out what would be causing that this instruction here to fall out of order. So I'm going to go through and clean up some other stuff. Anytime there's a return where the return would be implicit, I'm going to get rid of that. This is somewhat interesting that these are being created twice. It's possible that this type is wrong. Okay, so we still have this step that is not what I want it to be. Looking at the signature for get player collision with, this says it returns a sign 32. It's being treated as a byte, which is what the mask here is for. I'm gonna do the do while trick just to see. So do while gives us the match. Obviously not optimal, but it does work. And why does it work? Basically, we're forcing this as a critical section. We could make this volatile, and that may do the same thing. Surprisingly, it doesn't. I'm going to try one more thing, which is to make this a array, and we're setting the 0th element of that array, and that works as well. But it does screw up this up here, so I have to read as an array from there as well, and so that matches then. Is this an array or a struct or something else? Let's look. So first I want to see if anybody else has used this global, and then I also want to look to see if it's defined in STN01. So nobody has used it. The only references we have are in a few functions that are split between two files. Three functions. So this function, though, 5DC, has a match. This is in 3FA34. And let's see how that is being used there. Got it. So I ran into this yesterday as well. So this is a castle flag, and we need to look at the address of castle flags and calculate the offset into the flags with this. So it is going to be one of the castle flags that is in here. So castle flag 17 is a likely candidate because that is used extensively. So I may try that. 5DC, I believe, was a breakpoint that I had set earlier. And now we have this 034 that's using the same flag. So let's set that in a debugger, and maybe we can name that flag as well. Name that flag America's favorite game show. Name that flag. Sweeping the nation. I do have a save state. Before setting not that one. A save state before triggering the elevator. So if it's related to elevator, I could find that. I'm going to go through though and just see what if there's anything that might trigger it. Go back down, look at the telescope again. I'm going to load that save state and go up and trigger the elevator. Anything with a castle flag suggests that oh, hold on. Need to restart these captures. And OBS isn't cooperating with me. Give me 1 second while I wait for these windows to appear, if they do or not. Sometimes right-clicking doesn't bring up the menu right away, and eventually it will. I am going to go up, and I'll let you know, I guess, if I hit any of these breakpoints. So I'm in the doppelganger fight at the moment. This is a different stage when you're fighting doppelganger, so nothing that happens here is relevant to the other breakpoints that I've set. But once we leave the room, those breakpoints will be revalidated. There was a question yesterday about fog as well. When does fog show up in the outer wall? I didn't look that up over there in between streams. I should have. Probably would have been good to know. No reason really to kill that guy. Or it's stuck in the wall. When I was reading about the JP version last night, apparently it's considered easier than the US version. I don't know if that's due to enemy difficulty or like hit points, or what exactly would make it. Okay, so activating the elevator did not trigger that breakpoint. I'm going to ride the elevator, and that'll be the last thing that I check. Unfortunately, DuckStation is not cooperating, so you can't see any of my excellent playing. Sorry, it's not DuckStation, it's OBS's fault. It's all OBS's fault. All right, so not sure exactly what this is or where it is, but I am sure that it is Castle Flag 17. We can look as well at what Castle Flag, if it's used elsewhere, that might be helpful. And Castle Flag 17 is going to be 17. No, it looks like it's Safari not capturing either. I might have to end the stream early because none of this is capturing. Too bad, too bad. It looks like, yeah, this has been quite a while since it has been capturing. This might be a throwaway stream. It's okay. That happens sometimes. Let's see if... Yeah, I just can't get to any of the submenus or like properties windows in OBS. Maybe, and terminal's not updating either. So, what can we do? Basically, I think I'm going to end here since I can't show you what's going on anyway. If you're interested in decompiling Castlevania Symphony of the Night, go to soten.z.dev, and tomorrow I'll be back at the same time, hopefully with an OBS that allows me to properly display the windows. We were working on outer wall, something setting castle flag 17, whatever that is. I couldn't trigger any of those breakpoints. But yeah, come back tomorrow and we'll do some more. Adios.